Hi, I'm Matt Barry from ESPN. You're getting ready to watch one of the best college football podcasts ever. It's the Harris Highlight Show.
Na 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 na.
Coming to you live from the Bill Austin Radio Studio at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism in beautiful downtown Phoenix. This is episode 11 of season 4 of the Harris Highlight Show. Joining me this week is our college football analyst, Josh Schaefer, our college football expert, Lyle Goldstein, with our executive producer, Brady Klain. I am your host for the evening, Blake Harris. All I can hear, Brady, is the sound of you breathing in here, so I'm going to have to change my headset. Oh, now I can hear myself perfectly.
I had TalkBack still on in here so I could talk to you guys.
Oh, great.
That's probably what it was.
Fantastic. I can hear myself. We have a very fun show. I'm not even going to ask these guys how they're doing because we have too much to cover.
I'm doing good, Blake.
And there we go. Fantastic. It's going to be a very fun show because we have the college football playoff rankings being unveiled live on the show. Now, well, I mean, yes, we're having the college game day crew unveil the rankings live on our show. We were able to finesse that thanks to Brady, our executive producer, for pulling that
You're
off.
welcome.
So thanks to Brady for getting that done. Now, unfortunately, I thought that they were going to be right on time at 7, but I guess it's going to be after this great Kansas-Duke basketball game, which is now tied at 61 with 2.5 minutes left. So hopefully they don't go into overtime, guys, and these rankings don't get postponed. But the good thing about the rankings not starting for probably another 10 to 15 minutes is that it gives us time to kind of go over or preview what we think the rankings are going to look like, what we might see, what our predictions, what we would like to see are. So let's start with that. So the first edition of the College Football Playoff Rankings, they're probably likely going to be different than the AP poll. One can only hope, one can only assume. So guys, we kind of have done this every week, but now it's the most important week. You know, it's more than ever time to discuss the College Football Playoff Rankings. So going around the room real quickly, if you were one of the 13 members of the committee and you had to submit your 4 votes for tonight, how would your top 4 go?
Well, I know that we have a few things on our docket today that Blake hasn't even introduced yet, but I'm going to have to do some explaining, and I think we all might, because I think we're going to come in here with a couple of interesting takes, so we'll get into those in a bit. But if I'm coming in here, are we going one by one again?
Yeah, we can go one by one.
All right, so for me, guys, at number 4, I've got Penn State.
Okay, so I have 2 different lists. I have my own, and then I think I have what the committee will do. On
Your own.
On my own list, I have Clemson at 4.
Why would you? Yeah, that's what we're asking for, Lyle's your own list.
I know, but I think the committee's going to come out with something different than what I think.
So do I.
Okay.
Hence why it's our list.
That is very true, Blake.
Now, before we get to Brady's, if you're listening to the show live right now on BlazeRadioOnline.com, go to our Twitter at the HHShow_ and tweet at us what your top 4 would be. Not only are we on the committee tonight, boys, our viewers are on the committee as well. So what we should do is at the end of the show,
your votes matter.
We should take all of our top 4s and combine them to create the official Harris Highlights top 4. Maybe I can do that during the show. Maybe we can have one of our interns do it in the studio.
I like it.
I actually think, yes, we'll have our intern in the other studio do it. So if you want to let us know your top 4, go to our Twitter at the HHShow_. Tweet at us. Let us know. Brady?
Oh, I'm at 4?
Yes.
Clemson.
Ah.
Ooh.
Yeah. At my number 4, I'm
Yeah.
unfortunate that Josh took my spotlight, but I'm going to go with the Penn State Nittany Lions at 4.
That's tough, Blake.
It is tough.
That's tough.
You hate to see it.
Mm-hmm. For me, at number 3, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide.
I have Alabama at 3, right back at you.
Ditto. Bama at number 3.
And I myself have Alabama at number 3.
When was the
which-
last time all 4 of us have had Alabama not number 1 or number 2?
Well,
Intern?
oh.
Has it been ever?
About 6 seconds ago.
Can we get a fact check, intern?
Who knows?
All right, number 2.
At number 2, I have Ohio State.
I have the LSU Tigers at number 2.
I have the Bucked Eyes of Ohio State.
And I have the Ohio State Buckeyes as my number 2, which brings us to number 1.
LSU.
Ohio State.
LSU.
And I have LSU as well. Now, before we get into that, we're going to go to Twitter right now. The mentions, this is, the best part, guys, because Brady, our executive producer, saved Blaze Radio, and there's no longer a 8-minute lag. We have about a 15-second lag, so viewers that are listening can get in the replies immediately. So let's go. Saquon Vids has Ohio State at, I'm going to go from 1 to 4. Ohio State, LSU, Bama, and Penn State. Daniel has LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson. Jake Bellar has LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State. Andrew Coster, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Alabama. Dylan has LSU, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. And Matthew has LSU, Ohio State, Penn State, Alabama. So we've seen a theme, guys. It's really, for the most part, consisting of 5 teams. We all kind of talked about what, our personal top 4 is going to be. We're glad that the viewers are getting in their top 4. But now it's going to go to the thing that Lyle did, luckily. What do you think the top 4 is going to look like? And this one you can just go 1 through 4.
I think what the committee is going to have is LSU at 1, Alabama at 2, Ohio State at 3, Clemson at 4. Even if there's members on the committee that think maybe Ohio State's better than Alabama or better than LSU or in some order or another, they are going to have in one order or in one way or another Bama, LSU at 1 and 2 because they're going to hype up this matchup. I mean, that just makes too much sense. Somebody will lose, somebody will drop next week, but for this week, they're going to hype it up.
Yeah, agreed. I completely agree with those top 4.
Yeah.
See, the more I've been thinking about this, because one, I really hope that the committee, they go in there, they say, listen, you guys can have whatever top 4 you want as long as you vote either Alabama or LSU at 1 and 2, because if this game is a 1-3 matchup come Saturday, it's still going to be a great game, but it loses so much by going from 1-2 to 1-3. So I really hope the committee does that. But no, I just don't know if they're going to go for that. I think they're going to go based off their own honest rankings. And I'm honestly not going to be surprised if we see like an LSU 1, Ohio State 2, maybe like a Penn State 3 and Alabama 4. I mean, these rankings are going to tell a lot because if you take all preseason accolades out of the equation, if you take everything from last season, it's really tough to make a case that Alabama or Clemson should even be in the top 3, let alone maybe even the top 4, because as of right now, Clemson, none of the teams that they've played so far this year and are currently going to play the rest of the year are ranked in the top 25. Alabama, their schedule hasn't looked it hasn't looked the best either. And these teams they haven't dominated like the way they have in the previous years. Now, I think that because Alabama and Clemson are 2 of the biggest names, everyone knows they're probably the 2 best teams. Maybe that'll give them the advantage like the AP poll. But with the College Football Playoff Committee, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, you could honestly make the case that Georgia, they've had some more impressive wins this season than like Alabama. They do have the 1 loss, which was a bad loss to South Carolina. But if they were looking at resumes and like overall win quality, you can make the case like Georgia, they've had better ones than Alabama or Clemson. So it's going to be interesting to see what they take into account, how they work this. I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen, but that's what makes this so exciting is that I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen. And in about 5 to 10 minutes, hopefully, we will have our answers.
Well, that's a fair point, but every week when they show the intro video for the selection show, what's the first thing they say on their rules? Rule number 1, don't lose. So I highly doubt that Georgia is going to be in over one of those 5 teams.
Oh, no, I don't think they will be. I'm just saying at this point, I mean, I get they lost the game, but the whole point of this is to have the 4 best teams. And I get that, Georgia, they did have that slip up to South Carolina. Now, if, they just make a field goal, Georgia's still undefeated, and they're making a case for probably the 1 or 2 best teams, which, again, I get that you lose a game to a South Carolina, you have a loss, but the whole thing is to have the 4 best teams. Now, again, is Clemson a better team than Georgia? Probably. Is Alabama a better team than Georgia? Probably. But it's like at this point in the season, again, I'm not making a case that Georgia should be in the top 4 of any of these teams. I'm just saying it's tough when you got a team like Georgia that's got, coming off a very impressive win against Florida where they essentially pretty much dominated defensively. Offensively, they were okay, but it's just a matter of, which is why I really wish we could talk to Paula, where For those of you that don't know, one of the 13 members of the committee is an Arizona State professor. She works with me in the sports bureau. I talk to her often. I tried to do some nonchalant Oregon Duck pitches this past week where
It's the least nonchalant thing you could do.
Her office is like maybe 15 feet from where I sit at my desk, and I was kind of on Thursday to saying, man, I was reading off all these Oregon stats that made him like a really impressive team, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, she's on the playoff committee, but unfortunately they keep her really restricted to kind of rules, what she can and can't say. So I don't think she's said before like what they emphasize most. I know they've had some like the chairman's come out and said they take this into account, but it'd be really cool to understand like going into that meeting like what each of these 13 people like what they look for most. Do they look for being undefeated? Do they look for their wins? Do they look for their defense? How many points they're scoring a game? There's a lot to take into account, which, again, it's interesting when it comes down to 13 people.
I'll tell you this. You just listed off pretty much everything they look at. They don't look at one thing in specific. They look at the combination of absolutely everything. So Bama's an undefeated team. Bama's a top 5 team in the country. They could be 5. But are they one of the top 5 teams in the country? Yeah. Are they one of the top 2 teams in the country? Probably. But they could put them at 5 because of just the culmination of everything else that goes into that. So they take every ounce of information into their selections.
And here's what I'll say about Georgia, just to wrap up that point, because you're right. I mean, there is still a case that they could be one of the 4 best teams in college football. You know how we'll find that out, though? Is if they win the SEC. Georgia wins the SEC, everything about that South Carolina loss is forgotten, and they're ever so validated. But if they lose another game, including losing in the SEC title game, then they're probably not one of the best 4 teams. So we're just going to learn as these weeks go on.
Yeah, and you know what? Especially after this week, they play against a Florida team that I think we've all kind of agreed is probably not one of the top 5 or 6 teams in the country. Early on, we all said we didn't think they were a top 10 team. You know what? I think they are. I think Trask has been playing pretty well for him. But you know what? Georgia played him this week, and Jake Fromm, who you guys have all kind of said that is a good quarterback, but is not an elite quarterback, and is not going to go and beat big teams with good defenses, and I think that's what he did this week. I mean, he found the connection with Lawrence Cager. Finally, he goes off, and all of the receivers really look good in this game against Florida's team. And you know what? He goes 20 of 30 for 280 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I liked what Fromm brought to the table, and I think if we see that the rest of the season, Georgia really could contend for a top spot in the country if, obviously they need somebody else to lose, and there's a pretty big game this weekend in which someone's going to lose. So I think that bodes well for Georgia.
I'm going to go back to Twitter right now because we're getting a bunch of more mentions coming in. That guy Dean has his top 4: Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Clemson. Tyler has LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia at number 4. So that's the first one of Georgia right there. Now, David John Herrera II, this guy's got it spot on. I think this is the best top 4 we've seen so far. At 1 through 4, he's got Oregon at 1, then Oregon at 2, followed by Oregon at 3, rounding out Oregon at 4. That is a great top 4 right there, David John Herrera II. A great name as well. Depressed Blazers fan, which I don't blame you when you were a 13-point favorite against the Warriors last night and you ended up losing. That is a lot to be a depressed Blazers fan. He's got LSU, Alabama, Ohio State, Penn State. And wrapping this up, Sports by JR's got Ohio State, LSU, Alabama, Penn State. So again, for the most part, same 4 to 5 teams with the one Georgia add in there. So yeah, everyone's kind of on the same page.
And you know what? We're just moments or minutes away because the Duke-Kansas game just ended. Duke won by 2. And the college football selection show is coming up right after that. So we just got a few more minutes to kill.
Which is great because I'm great at killing time. Now, guys, another question for you. Do you guys like the fact that all these rankings and essentially the fate of the college football world is decided by 13 people? Now, obviously, the BCS system had its flaws, but do you guys like the fact that 13 individuals are able to determine essentially what happens in college football?
Yeah. You know what? I think yes. I like it, and I think that means there can be a little bit... I think there is less discrepancy when you have 13 people rather than the AP poll when you have 1,000 people sending in their rankings. And I think that's one reason why in the past we've seen a lot of AP polls week by week that we did not like, and we did not like last year's at all. And this year, we barely talked about it at all because I think for the most part, we thought the AP poll was not too bad this year at all. To be honest, there has not been a week of this season where I have been upset with what I've seen in the AP poll. But I think that the College Football Playoff Committee is a lot better when it's a smaller group of people because it can operate a lot tighter. And then if you really think about it, they have their meetings. Like the AP poll, for the most part, is just people just sending in who they think are the best teams in the country, the top 25 teams. You actually have these types of meetings with the College Football Playoff Committee where they meet in person, they talk about things, and that's kind of how they also figure out who they think the top 25, let alone the top 4 are in the country, and I think that's a better system.
I do too. And Blake brought up the BCS. BCS was decided by computers. That's not real life. These aren't, that's not what people do every weekend watching college football. It has the human aspect to it. And it's not like these 13 people are just, nobodies. These are knowledgeable people in the world of college football. And it's not like they kind of just sit there. It's like, all right, what do you guys want to decide this week? You want to put them here? Yeah, sure. Meeting adjourned. I mean, they'll sit there for hours and discuss it. They bring up all the numbers, all the strength of schedules, all the resumes. I mean, is it a perfect system? Maybe not. But can there be a perfect system? I don't know. I honestly don't think so.
The perfect system
I turned your microphone off because
is
you were
that
chugging
we
water.
bring in the 64-team playoff bracket. No, I'm kidding. Also, the fact that right now, are you guys watching the stream?
Yes.
I think it was Dress Like a Friend Day. Well, I guess you guys can't see, but
I'm looking at Reese Davis, Jesse Palmer, Joey Galloway, and Kirk Herbstreit. I don't know what you're looking at, Blake.
well, they're wearing the exact same suits in the middle.
Oh, well, okay. That is funny, actually. You're right.
This is top tier radio content right there, folks.
It is. That it is.
Yes,
Top
absolutely. Blake, I'm logging into your TV provider.
Oh, thank you. It's Spectrum.
I know.
Same.
His password is...
Hey.
Probably something super long and dumb.
BK, how do you feel about 13 people
I like
determining
it. I like it because it allows, like what Josh said, one of the two guys before me, Josh or Lyle, said, it's a small enough group that allows everybody to get together once a week to discuss and figure out everything that is going on and what needs to be said, what needs to be done, and where teams need to be placed. So I think 13 is the perfect number for it because it's not too big where you're going to get so many different inputs and answers that you got to do a whole formulation and sort of even and average out everybody's rankings like the AP poll does. But it's not small enough where it's only dictated by 3 or 4 people. So the 13, I think, is great because it allows everybody to get an equal input and it allows everybody to have enough representation around the country in different spaces and different places around the country to give a good enough sample size to show what is truly the best. And it's also 13 teams or 13 members. Give it a good number to have everybody see every game, every stat, every information, and they sort of, I'm guessing, divide and conquer in that aspect of it.
Man, I still would love to know what goes down in these meetings. I want to know if there's any heated arguments that happen where someone has a team at 1 or 2 and someone disagrees and they start going at it. I want to know what goes on. But right now I'm just going to go down the list and name. I'm not going to go over the names of everyone, but I'm going to go over the positions. So again, I think it was Lyle said it's not like these are a bunch of random nobodies. These are people with solid knowledge of the college football world. So we got for the most part, a lot of these are ADs, athletic directors.
All but one person on the committee is technically working in the athletic department for the school, and the one is not as Paula. She's the media representative.
Love it. So way to go, Paula. Shout out to AZ right there. So we got the AD of Florida, Georgia Tech, former Texas A&M head coach, former chief of staff for the Army. That's a cool one right there. The president of Robert Morris University, Ronnie Lott, just a former All-American at USC, an AD at Arkansas State. We got former head coach, AD of Oklahoma. Of course, we got Paula, AD for Iowa. Frank Beamer, former Virginia Tech coach, which is an awful photo of him, by the way. I'm looking at the official website. He looks miserable in this photo. And then Rob Mullins, who's the AD for Oregon, who's still the chair. So these are people that have an extensive knowledge of college football, so it's not a bunch of nobodies. So unfortunately, we're still at commercial. It's now 7:24.
You want to talk about some games from this past weekend
we
and kill some time?
We could talk about some games while we wait. So the first game we touched up on it briefly, but that's Georgia-Florida. That was a very good game. I mean, Georgia, they seemed like they were kind of dominating most of the game. Florida got back in it at the end, but ultimately Georgia got the job done. So guys, Florida, they're done, but they're still a very respectable team. I think if you put them in any other conference, they're probably winning their conference championship. It just is a drag that they're in the SEC. Georgia, I think there's only one way that they can make the playoff, and that's essentially to win out and win the SEC.
Yeah, I agree. And that's what I said a couple minutes ago, too, because that's going to require either Alabama or LSU to lose, which would knock one of those guys off, likely, because, I mean, it would just be the end of the year type factor. Losing late never helps. So, yeah, that's Georgia's best chance. They're going to have to win out.
I mean, it's that's what makes this South Carolina loss for them so bad, is because now you lose to a team that's not only inferior, but it's a team that could essentially knock you out of playoff contention without physically knocking you out as the season goes on into the later weeks, because it's a game that they should have won, and they had the opportunity to win, and right now they're a one-loss team. So not only do they need to win out, but they need help too. So it's a little bit of you're controlling your fate, but also if you slip up a little bit, your season's over. So I think that's what's tough for them moving forward. And, I think Georgia's a really good team. I think they're a top 5 team in college football right now. But that's what that South Carolina loss does for you. And that's obvious. Like Lyle said, your number one rule if you're the playoff committee is just win out. Don't lose. And that's what Georgia did, which is obvious. But it's just worse when it's a team like South Carolina and you've still got other teams to look forward to.
Yeah. Well, Blake, I know you're looking forward to this next game.
Well, I mean, I was just going to propose another question. Though. I mean, looking at Georgia's schedule, I mean, they still got some good games. Missouri, that's going to be a good opponent. Auburn's going to be ranked probably in the top 12 or 13 when they play them in a few weeks. Texas A&M, that could be a ranked game in a few weeks near the end of November. Then Georgia Tech. Let's say Georgia wins out. They go to, the SEC championship. Let's say Georgia loses like on a game-winning field goal. And they're officially a 2-loss team with a last-second loss to either an Alabama or LSU. And you got some of these other maybe like 1-loss teams at the helm. Do you still think Georgia has any chance to get in where they still have an impressive resume? Again, that's going to be a bad loss to South Carolina, but they're going to have a lot of good wins. And if they're staying, head-to-head with either Alabama or LSU and it comes down to, a last-second kick or something, do you think that they could still get in with 2 losses potentially?
I don't think
it's
the same thing as last year. I mean, people were mad that Georgia didn't get in last year, but it's the same thing. You lost 2 games. You lost to a backup quarterback in the title game, and ultimately you're not going to be rewarded for losing 2, especially because that first loss was so substantial. They lost by 20-plus earlier in the year. So it's the same idea. I mean, Georgia might be one of the most talented teams in the country, but if they can't close out and win games, they're not going to get rewarded.
Well, there you go. Spot on. Which brings us to our next game. Do you have a...
No, I just have a quick question for you regarding the College Football Playoff Committee. I don't know if you guys are watching the stream right now and saw that, but can any of you tell me where the committee meets to make their selections?
Grapevine, Texas.
Were you watching the stream and saw that?
Well, no, but I mean, I've known that because I've watched for the last 5 years or whatever.
I always like these things where Brady's like, all right, guys, I got a question for all you guys. Here's my question, Lyle. Here's the answer.
Yeah, it's like boom, 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 right on top of that.
Josh and I literally can't even get a word in.
No, don't be sorry.
Okay.
It was a trivia question. You got it.
That was like yesterday when I was featured on a certain show at Josh's, and I was losing every trivia question.
I mean, I wouldn't know. I mean, I do have this new iPhone, but I don't know if it's got service whenever I'm in Cronkite because I have yet to get an invite to come on Josh's show.
That's tough.
Which is ironic because I invite Josh to come on my show every week.
See, and again, we've been doing this show for 4 years, and Blake always says, it's our show, but when it comes down to it, Blake's like, yeah, sponsorship money? I don't know if we're going to get any of that.
Earlier, Blake was yelling at us for making a decision regarding the past in this show, and we were like, Blake, it's the Harris Highlights show, not the rest of the guys in Blake's show.
And the rankings have officially begun, and coming in at number 24 are the Georgia Bulldogs, guys. I'm kidding. So SMU, Navy, Oklahoma. I mean, at this point, until we get to 10, it's nothing really too exciting. I mean...
Here comes ASU at 20.
I mean...
No.
Nope.
Fight on.
Hey, how about
I think you're like a couple seconds ahead of me, Blake.
Oh, I am.
Yeah.
Are you just watching? Are you watching on the homepage?
Bro, they're already unveiling the top 4. How far behind are you guys?
Okay.
Hey, the Minnesota Gophers come in at 17, Lyle. They come in at 17, so the committee is not as high as the AP poll is on the Gophers.
That sounds like they have some smarts. Maybe Minnesota's not as good as advertised. We're gonna find out.
Agreed.
Kansas State at 16 with 2 losses.
Yeah.
See, I'm upset now. I'm gonna have to go back and rework our pick'ems because I have all the AP poll rankings, which is going to mess this up because I have the number 13 Minnesota Gophers against, Penn State, but this one, Minnesota 17, as my stream has just gone out.
You also have Alabama at 1 in the pick'ems, Blake.
Oh, I do?
Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah, I switched it on the
so did I.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Maybe that's a thing for things to come.
Well, Blake, we can keep you updated.
Notre Dame comes in at number 15.
Ooh.
Seems about right.
Auburn's in at 11 at 7-2.
I see you're a couple seconds ahead of me too.
Oh, Michigan at 14. There's still time.
There is
There
still
is
time.
still time.
For an Oregon-Michigan national championship
Yes.
game.
The
Right.
two best teams in college football
Okay, but one to
will
note
meet
is
up.
Baylor's at 12. So I mean that's about where the AP poll had them. Maybe they're not taking Baylor that seriously yet. They're going to have to win some bigger games because they have them outside the top 10.
Based off competition, Baylor is a good spot at 12.
Yeah.
Florida comes in at number 10, which, I mean, do you guys think that there's 9 teams better than them in the country?
Yeah.
Seems about right.
Oklahoma comes in at 9. This was a team that I think we all had in our playoff, a few weeks ago.
Ooh.
Utah coming in at 8
Seems
as my stream goes out.
No, that also seems about right for Utah. I mean, one loss, they're going to be right outside the bubble. I mean, they're competing.
Is your stream still out?
Nah, it's about to come back on. All right, my thing just came back
See, I'm
on.
a few
Now
seconds behind.
this will be interesting to see. And the Oregon Ducks come in at 7. Now, that is something you just, hey, 2 Pac-12 teams in the top 8.
Yep.
That's
It's true.
really good right there.
That
good for
Pac-12
the
title
Pac.
game's got a real chance to have some implications. It's gonna be pretty cool.
That's true. I mean, at this point, I think it easily has a chance if Oregon and Utah can both win out. My stream just keeps going
right,
out.
are
This
you-
is
Also,
full
did Utah
screen?
just abandon their U logo with like the feather? Because
I
they've
think-
only used the
They
the
did.
2 U's all year.
They did. Kind of like how U Arizona got rid of U of A.
All right, so the top 6 are going to be exactly what we thought. The 5 undefeateds in Georgia.
So essentially, I mean, looking at this right now, 7 through 10, it's the exact same as it was in the AP poll. And the top 6 remaining teams are the teams that I think we all expected. Well, I mean, I thought Oregon would crack the top 4 somehow. I guess my pitch to Paula didn't work, guys. Or maybe it did. Maybe she had Oregon at 1. Which, by the way, do they release the rankings of all 13 members, or do they keep
No,
that
they do
private?
not. That's
they don't.
private.
I guess I'll
Because-
just have to ask Paula on Thursday.
Just ask her that straight up question. Don't ask her who she did because she'll be like, I can't tell you.
Did anyone have Oregon in the top 4, Paula?
No.
Yes or
No, Blake, they did not.
Paula, blink twice.
Here we
if,
go. Top 6.
All right, top 6, and my connection is still out.
So the first team out at
Love
number
how-
6 is Georgia.
Love how they're doing it at Madison Square Garden. Cool
Of
location,
course.
too.
Well, and Georgia comes in at 6.
I just said that.
Oh, really? I didn't even hear.
So you guys are still ahead. Yeah,
Is
you guys
this-
are still 15 seconds ahead of me. I don't
Is
know
this
why.
normal, or do they? I thought they started with 1.
No.
It depends. I mean, that's the most anticlimactic one. So, I mean, Georgia being at 6, the top 5 is now where it gets interesting. So let's see.
Yes. Let's, in fact, see what happens. I'm not going to look at Josh's computer. I'm going to look at mine. I'm a few seconds behind.
I'm
All right.
kidding.
Well, oh, that's unfortunate because I was going to say, what happens here? I guess we'll have to wait and see
about to
because
find out.
Clemson at 5. Well, so I guess my top 4 teams are spot on. That's
Same.
and Josh had his top 4 teams spot on. So Brady and Lyle, Penn State at 4.
I just didn't want to have all of us be Penn State at the
Penn
same.
State at 4. Very interesting. Very
Okay.
interesting. So they're definitely doing this in reverse because remember in years past
Well,
they did start with 1.
And here's also where it gets interesting. The top 3, too. In what order are they going to have it?
Please have Alabama and LSU at 1 and 2.
Yeah, I agree.
And my stream went out again, so now I'm going to look at Josh's.
All right,
Actually, I'm not going to
so-
look at Josh's because mine is back up, and I'm going to wait for it to load so I can tell all the viewers live who's the 3rd ranked team in the country.
And UCF is number 3.
Man,
Wow.
they are building suspense on this, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are.
They are building suspense. Man, they
I mean,
come on.
it feels like it's going to be LSU Alabama, but who knows?
This is exciting.
I think it's going to be LSU Alabama just for this week's game.
It
I do
better be.
too.
It's got.
And clearly that's what they're doing with Penn State. They want to hype up this.
Oh wow!
And Alabama's 3. The college football playoff committee, you have ruined this week's game. But
yeah,
man.
but Blake
But-
and I suddenly look very smart.
now
the
hold
AP
on.
poll.
LSU's at 2.
Oh my
I
gosh!
got it right.
Okay.
And I got it right. How
Oh.
about it?
Well, interesting.
Wow.
I didn't know Kurt Herbstreit was on the playoff committee.
Oh, please.
What do you think
Ohio
he's doing
State,
right
I'm going
now?
to say it again. Ohio State is the best and most talented team in college football. I've said that for the last few weeks. When you look at what they've done, they have the most impressive. Okay, LSU has the better ranked wins. Ohio State, if you're going to look at pure talent, they are the most talented team, and they're rewarding them for that, I
They-
think.
they-
So
have-
what they're
so-
saying is the first round. If the playoffs were to start today, it would be Bama LSU in the first round.
That would be pretty
I
cool.
love it.
And I'll tell you what they're doing with Penn State at 4 too, and they probably do think overall Penn State's just the better team, but they're really hyping up this Penn State-Ohio State matchup all of a sudden too, because that's going to go on a couple weeks down the road.
You mean Ohio State being the better team? You said Penn State.
Yeah, no, Penn State-Ohio State, they're going to play.
Oh, I know.
That's what I'm saying. Penn State, Ohio State are playing 2 weeks down the road, so with Penn State being in the top 4, that's going to hype up the matchup even more.
I know. I thought you said even though Penn State is probably the better team.
Oh, whoops, Ohio State.
Back to what Lyle was saying about Ohio State. I think I said this last or 2 weeks ago on the show. Is it shouldn't be tanking for Tua. It should be the chase for Chase because Chase Young is the most dynamic defensive player in all of college football this year.
Agreed.
Arguably one of the most dynamic players, both sides of the ball in all of college football this year and that we've seen in the last couple of years. On the other side of the ball, you got one of the most dynamic quarterbacks, most athletic quarterbacks, one of the smartest, most consistent, high-performing quarterbacks of any team this year. You got the best offensive player, you got the best defensive player. Put that together, what do you got? You got the best team in the country.
Absolutely. And the defense as a whole is just so much better than it's been in years past. I mean, you look at a guy like Jeff Okudah, too. That's going to be one of the first 10 names off the board come the NFL draft in April, and he gets overshadowed for Chase Young. I mean, Ohio State is just so complete on both sides of the ball, where, look, LSU, Alabama, yeah, they're scoring a lot of points. The defense isn't all there, where I think they feel that the Ohio State Buckeyes are the most complete team.
Hey, not a bad first year for your tenure for Ryan Day, huh?
How about it? Not bad at all for Ryan Day.
I mean, I feel like if I was the head coach of that team, they'd still be pretty good. I mean, that's a pretty good roster they got there. So I'm not shocked because I did feel like the committee would do this, but this is kind of upsetting, though, because 2-3 is just not the same as 1-2. That's a little upsetting.
It's not, yeah.
But you can't, you can't go doing that. But how about that? So LSU at 2, Ohio State at 1. Again, though, I mean, you can make the case, I think, for LSU and Ohio State. They've both been playing fantastic football. Ohio State, especially on both sides. LSU on both sides. Things are going to get interesting. Things are going to get very, very interesting.
You know what I just thought about, Blake? I just thought about this. I don't know why it just popped in, but there's been a curse like every year against the first week's number 3 team, hasn't there? So is Alabama,
they end up not making it?
So is Alabama not going to make the playoff in 2019? Because every year that number 3 team, I think, has then gone on to miss the playoff if you're ranked third the first week.
Here's another fun fact. No number 1 team in the college football playoff era has ever won the national championship.
Really?
So overall, these college football playoff rankings, how much can they mean? But I mean, this is going to be exciting. Where you got obviously you have LSU and Alabama playing this week, and what is it? 2 weeks when Ohio State plays Penn State, the 23rd. So that's 2 weeks away, I believe. That's going to be some matchup right there. I mean, that has a chance to be a maybe 1 versus 3 matchup. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But a lot of fun stuff. But Clemson coming in at 5, so I guess that goes to show that they haven't really played anyone, so they're taking that into account. Now, this is going to be interesting. I know I proposed this, like a week ago or a week or two ago, but let's just say, Alabama, LSU, they play a great game. Someone comes out on top by a few points, and they go on to win their conference championship. Would you still take, if LSU loses this game, let's say Ohio State plays Penn State close, and that's one of their only losses, would you potentially still have Clemson not making it if they're undefeated and they're just playing essentially these cakewalks the rest of the way?
No. Again, rule number 1, don't lose. If Clemson goes undefeated, wins the ACC, they have every right to be in the playoff. And that's the thing about them being at number 5 this week is, yeah, they're at number 5 for the first week of rankings. Doesn't really matter because come next week, they're probably going to be in the top 4.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess my question going back to that is, so you'd rather have a Clemson team with no top 25 wins over an LSU team that lost a close game to Bama, that had a win over a ranked Texas, or I guess not ranked now, but at the time, the number 9 ranked Texas, number 7 Florida, and number 9 Auburn, and they're essentially going to have only 1 loss on the season.
Well, is it about what I want or what I think's going to happen?
No, what you think should happen. Because I still don't understand how you can make the case that although Clemson, they go undefeated, they play absolutely no one, where LSU had great win after great win, and just because they lose 1 game against an Alabama team, I don't think they should get hurt by it.
Well, I think LSU is going to get in anyway. What I think is going to happen is Ohio State's going to beat Penn State, Penn State's going to fall out, and Clemson and LSU both get in. So at the end of the day, I don't think that argument is going to matter that much. If you're throwing that exact hypothetical, I mean, it's tough. It's kind of like people that were mad about Notre Dame getting in last year instead of Georgia, where it's Georgia lost 2 games. And it's, again, rule number 1, like they say in the intro, don't lose. And they're going to reward teams for going undefeated if you're a Power 5 conference champion or if you're a team like Notre Dame that beats everybody on your schedule. So do I think that LSU is a more talented team than Clemson, even with 1 loss? Yes. Do I think that they can be rewarded for losing? I don't.
Here's this for you, Lyle. You are spot on. No original number 3 team in the rankings has made it to the playoffs. Auburn in 2014, Ohio State in 2015, Michigan in 16, Notre Dame in 17, and last year LSU. No number 3 team at the first ranking has made the playoffs.
Every year.
Well, it's just like the
And
very
typically
first.
they've been announced a lot earlier, though, too.
This is the latest it's been announced because they had that week 0 at the beginning of the year.
Hey, just remember that Mississippi State was the very first number 1 team.
Yep.
And-
Dax, Mississippi State Bulldogs were the number 1 team.
Them now. So those are the rankings. Those
That
are
was
our
also 5 years
reactions.
ago, but-
there are still 4-5 weeks left, so a lot still has to change. A lot still has to happen. We're going to get more clarity as the weeks come on. But back to some games from this past weekend. And I wrote this down in the notes, but I can't say what exactly it is. But let's just say Oregon won a very convincing game against the USC Trojans. Now, it was essentially a very close game in the first half, and then for whatever reason, with like 10 seconds left, SC opted to just, not do a squib kick, not do just a non-existent kick to make sure Oregon can return it. Well, Oregon houses one. They go up, I believe it was 2 scores, then to end the half. It was like 13 points, something like that. And the second half, they completely run away. Now, guys, was this a very impressive and convincing win from the Ducks? Because we all think, and I still think SC is a very good team. They're probably the 3rd best team in the Pac-12 at the moment. But I mean, in the first half, SC had their number, but that second half was just, I mean, that wasn't even a game. That was just one team just dominating another. So were you impressed? Were you convinced by the Oregon Ducks in this game?
Yeah, you know what? I don't know if I want to say that I was convinced that they're going to compete for a playoff spot or even their talent. I think they're obviously a very good football team, but what convinced me about Oregon in this game is that they're resilient. Because this game was 10-0 SC. It was on the verge of being 14-0. SC picked off Herbert and had 1st and goal from the 8 and left points on the board and only kicked a field goal, so that's 10-0. USC has a 1st and goal and inside the 8-yard line again, has a 3rd and goal from the 2 or 3 yard line and fumbles the ball and Oregon picks it up. This game very easily could have been 17-0. And then after that, even when Oregon gets on the board and takes the lead, USC cuts the lead to 3 or 4 with 30 seconds left in the half, 20 seconds left in the half, and then, like Blake said, decides to kick the ball off, and Oregon houses it. The dude takes it all the way back untouched. There were just so many moments in this first half where I really thought, yes, it's early. Yes, it's an injured and depleted USC team. Yes, it's a top 10 team in the country. But there were so many moments in the first half when I thought that SC really could have put the game away. And they let it get away from them, and Oregon took advantage. And that's what impressed me about Oregon, was not only did they then take the lead, but they then ran away with it once they realized that they knocked SC back onto their heels, and then they knocked them down and stepped on their throats. That's what they did in the second half.
I think what we're really starting to see is there is a serious gap between 2 teams in the Pac-12 and everybody else. Because we talked about at the start of the season that anybody in the Pac-12 can beat anybody, and it's such a competitive conference in that way. At times it's hurt them. This year, there are 2 top dogs established above everybody else. It's Oregon and it's Utah.
And that's really good for the conference, I think.
Because they now have a real chance to compete for the playoff where there are 2 superior teams. And for Oregon, they just proved it again. They had another Pac-12 foe on their schedule. USC is a pretty good football team. I think for a 4-loss football team, they're better than their record says, especially considering all the injuries like Josh has talked about. But
18 guys out right now.
Oregon, yeah, and especially with that. But Oregon, they handled them, and they continue to show why they're one of the 7 to 8 best teams in college football.
Josh, I think the one word that you said that really stuck out to me was resiliency. In this Oregon squad is because it was close, and that's what happens when you get a young defense like Oregon's, obviously led by top prospect Kayvon Thibodeau, who is a stud.
Yeah. Who chose Oregon over SC, too.
Grew up minutes away from the Coliseum, correct?
Yeah, and then transferred to Oaks Christian, so he played high school ball a little further away, but yeah.
Grew up in Southern California and decided to go all the way up north to Oregon. The resiliency of that Oregon defense to, like you said, that small push and pull for the first quarter and a half, quarter in, what would that have been, 11 minutes?
Yeah.
And then that last minute of halftime, the return for the touchdown. That's when it all broke loose for me, was this Oregon team was, if you saw it, you just sort of saw a switch being flipped. And the floodgates opened, and it all just sort of came at USC at once. And it started with that touchdown return.
Yeah.
And because it just sort of happened, that was it. They go into halftime, get a little bit of time to recoup, and then there was no looking back for Oregon.
What's tough, I think, for SC in that one is not only did they leave so many points on the board and have so many opportunities and couldn't put it away early or even get back in the game late, but what's disappointing is SC's got starters coming back this week against ASU when now their season's over, essentially. I mean, both ASU and USC, without actually being eliminated, have pretty much been eliminated from competing in the Pac-12 South, even though they both look like teams that were going to compete against Utah early on, especially with the way that ASU was playing. They were ranked in the top 14, and then USC beat Utah. Things were looking good for both ASU and USC, and now Utah has one of the easier schedules in the Pac-12, especially for a team that's really good. There is no reason why Utah should lose another game. So it's disappointing that both ASU and USC, outside of, I guess, this game against each other, are going to be healthy. And for the most part, I think kind of have easy schedules the rest of the way.
Well, I was just going to say, moving on to the next one, I mean, both Washington and Utah. Washington has Oregon State, Colorado, and Washington State. Utah has UCLA, Arizona, Colorado. So both those teams should go 3-0 easily. They're essentially going to meet in the Pac-12 title game, and it's all going to.
Do you mean Oregon? I think you said Washington.
Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why I got Washington up here for whatever reason. Who knows? Hey, we all have mind blunders every now and then. So it's going to be Oregon versus Utah. I mean, I assume Oregon's going to win the rest of their games, whoever they're playing. Now, I mean, at this point in our notes, I put who has a better chance to represent the Pac-12 in the playoff, but it's essentially just going to be whoever wins that Pac-12 title game. Now, obviously, things have to happen in their favor because they're not going to be able to pick up any convincing wins over the course of the season. It's all going to have to come down to, can a few things happen in front of them for that Pac-12 title game? Maybe is it 5 versus 6? Is it 6 versus 7? Because if that's the case, maybe that'll give a team an extra advantage, because if you have one of these teams where they go into it, they win their conference game, they win against a top 7 team going into the playoff, that might have to happen. So I think we can all agree Utah or Oregon, if they win the conference title game, they have a chance to be in, but they're going to have a lot of things go their way. But one final thing I want to touch up on, guys, that SMU-Memphis game. Now, this was game day. This was the primetime Saturday night game. It was an absolute shootout. It seems like every time an American Conference game gets, some national recognition, it's always a great game. So should the American Conference finally get more respect? And at what point should we consider them moving to the Power 5? Because it's not just like it's a stacked, 2 teams. This has been an American Conference over the last years. They usually have 6 or 7 teams that are really good, and they usually have like 3 to 4 that always find themselves in the top 25.
Here's my problem. A lot of them are smaller universities. Not that has anything to do with where they should look in terms of talent, but I think that's also something in recruiting. One thing that really needs to be talked about in this discussion, we could have a whole show on this. We really could. There is not as much consistency in these Group of 5 conferences like the American as there is in Power 5 conferences, and I think that's something that's really important. Is okay, yeah, you have Boise State kind of put on go on a run from 2005, 2006, all the way up to 2012-ish, and Boise State is still a threat. Boise State is a team that could go to a Power 5 conference like the Pac-12 or the Big 12 and compete every year. That's the type of program that they've built there. But the problem is especially since the death sentence that SMU got, they've been a program that hasn't been consistent. Memphis has not been consistent. Sure, these are guys that are going to be consistently competitive out of the Group of 5 schools. They might appear in the top 25 rankings. They might play in a decent bowl game. Maybe they might not win, but they'll be there. The problem is I don't think they can consistently compete with a lot of Power 5 schools, especially the white-collar programs like Alabama, LSU, USC, Notre Dame, Texas, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan. With these long-term historic programs that have been really, really good throughout history, I don't think they will ever have the opportunity to compete against them consistently.
Fair point.
That's my problem too. Is this conversation seems to kind of come up every time a Group of 5 team is really, really good. Do they deserve more respect? Should they be in the top 7? Should they get into the playoff? The problem is they've got to play some better teams, and they need to play some top dogs before they can really garner that respect. It was kind of the same thing with UCF, and they didn't quite get into the playoff. Yeah, they went undefeated, but they didn't quite get into the top 4 because they didn't go up against those top-notch teams, and that's the problem. Until the American Conference, until some of these Group of of 5 powerhouses actually start to play some Power 5 powerhouses, it's going to be tough to garner any respect.
I mean that is also true, but it's tough to ignore the fact. I mean, they got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that have at least 7 wins. I mean, UCF, Cincinnati, Memphis, SMU, Navy, they've all been fantastic this year. Houston, I mean, if they had Greg Ward, they'd probably be a 6-7, 7-1 team at this point of the season. South Florida, we've seen in years past, they're always kind of near the top in regards to that. Temple, they're a good team. Now, again, I don't have everyone's schedule, so I don't know exactly how many Power 5s they're playing, how they're looking for each of the games, but, I mean, I definitely think this isn't a conference to overlook. I think...
You're right.
I definitely think if you were to match all these teams up in the American... or let's say you take like the top 6 teams in the American and you take Clemson out of the equation, I think more American teams would beat ACC teams.
Right now, absolutely.
The top end. So I'm
absolutely.
saying if you take Clemson out of the equation, I think as right now, the American's an overall better conference than the ACC.
You also mentioned Houston. Don't forget, they don't have Derek King.
Oh, Derek King. What I said,
Yeah.
I said Greg Ward Jr. I'm going back like 5 years.
Yeah, I don't think
or
you're going back
something like
that far, but still.
Our first season of doing this
He
show,
was
Greg
Greg
Ward was
Ward.
the quarterback.
Guys, I think it would be worth it. We've talked about some of the shows that we do in the off season, and unfortunately, just with our scheduling, sometimes we can't do it every week. So a lot of times in the off season, it's like a bi-weekly thing. Especially this year, I think we should just have a show where we do something evergreen and we just do a full 120 team conference realignment.
Yes.
I think we should do it.
Completely agree.
I'm all for it.
Completely agree.
Full show, and we all do it.
Fantastic. But hey, shout out to the American Conference on that. Now, I'm just going to bring this up to you guys because it's too tough to text. We actually can go over this week for our show. Normally, we stop at 8:30, but the show that's after us, I guess, has intramurals. So they are not going until 10 p.m. So no one's in studio until 10 p.m. We can have a 3-hour show if we want.
I don't think we're going to have a 3-hour show.
That means I get to listen to Blake's voice even longer.
Hey, you say that like it's a bad thing, Brady.
It is. Moving on.
All right, what's next on the notes? All right, Heisman discussion. Now, we're not going to go giving our top 5 because, as Lyle mentioned, all the powerhouse teams that had their Heisman hopefuls literally were all on a bye this past week, so nothing changed unless for whatever reason last week you heard or read something that wants to do, you guys want to swap something. So have you guys read or heard anything the last week that makes you want to swap someone out?
I don't know how to read.
No, that's true. That's true. So essentially, I think our top 5s are going to stay the same. So some questions that I jotted down here. With Joe Burrow and Tua going at it in the game this upcoming week, I think we all had Joe Burrow at 1. I want to say maybe someone had him at 2.
I think I still had him at 2 and Hurts at 1.
And I know Josh had Tua out of his top 5 because of the injury, but I think still all of us had
He's
Tua
in, I guess.
I think we all had him in his top 5. So essentially, this is going to be a huge game for both these guys. So I'm going to say with Joe Burrow and Tua, are either one of them still going to be in the Heisman race should they lose?
Lyle?
Let me just read you something here, Blake. Kyler Murray lost the game last year.
Oh, boy.
Baker
Here
Mayfield
we
lost
go.
the regular season game 2 years ago. Lamar Jackson lost 3 games 3 years ago. Derrick Henry lost the game 4 years ago. Mariota lost the game 5 years ago. Manziel lost 2 regular season games in 2012. And RG3 lost 3 regular season games in 2011. Those are all regular season games. Does that answer your question?
No. Are they still, again, okay, let's say LSU, do you guys hear something?
What is going on in the hallway?
I don't know. I'll find out.
Yes, they're still
Those
in the
Rangers.
race. Yes, they're still in the
Okay,
race. It's all about if you play well. If one of these guys goes for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns and loses, they're still in the race.
Absolutely.
Okay, maybe in the race is not what I should have said because they'll still be in the top 5. Let's say Alabama wins this game. Joe Burrow throws 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. How much does he fall? How much does this hurt his potential Heisman stock?
For me, not much. And yes, I think it's because he plays a legitimate team. He plays a legitimate defense, and let's say that he doesn't go off. He has an okay game, like you said. He is... Okay, hold on. Let me backtrack. What did I have last week? My top 5 last week. My top 5... Whoa. Oh, yeah, okay. So my top 5 last week was what? It looks like... I could be wrong. I could be a little behind on my notes, but it looks like I have Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Justin Fields, Jonathan Taylor, and I had Jerry Jeudy as just like he was my filler for Tua.
I think, though, you flipped Burrow to 1, if I remember right.
I might have. So Burrow was 1, sure. Jalen was 2. I am not dropping him past 3 unless Jonathan Taylor goes off, unless Tua goes off, unless Justin Fields goes off.
This was my whole thing with Dwayne Haskins last year. The week before he lost to Purdue, I still had him at 1. He went for nearly 500 yards in a loss. I said, I'm not putting the loss on Haskins. He still had a good game. I'm still going to leave him at 1. That's my thing here, is if Burrow has an okay game, as long as he isn't just absolutely awful. Same thing with Tua. I don't think there's any reason they should free fall out of the rankings.
So if he has an okay game, and let's say Tua goes off and wins, let's say Jalen Hurts has another incredible week, Justin Fields has another incredible week, are you still keeping Joe Burrow at 1?
Well, okay,
No.
I have Jalen Hurts at 1 to begin with. I still think there's a good chance Jalen ends up winning. Do I still have Burrow in the top 3? Absolutely. I don't think you can, like Josh said, I don't think you can drop him anywhere past that.
Yeah, no, Blake. I think if your scenario happens to the point, on the nose, you nail it right now, I am not keeping him at number 1 anymore.
Yeah. Not at number 1, but the question does say, are they still in the race? Yes, they're still in the race.
Yeah, I would not drop him past number 3.
So then this also takes into account where, like, let's say next week when Justin Fields goes against Penn State, let's say he goes for 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, Ohio State wins the game. How all of a sudden now are we putting Justin Fields like near the top? Because Ohio State doesn't really have any of those. I mean, at this point, I guess Cincinnati is probably their best win of the season. So it's like looking forward.
Wisconsin? I still think Wisconsin's a good team, but you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, what's it going to take for Justin Fields then to like overleap, or like I think for you guys for having Jalen Hurts, he already lost the game. Like, what's it going to take for someone else to overtake him? Because I think this year, usually by now it's kind of down to 2 or 3, or someone's just running away with it. We literally have 4 guys that you can. What is going on out there?
And you can, you can still include Chase Young. Joel Klatt was on a few shows this week, and he was very, very much a proponent for Chase Young should seriously be considered for number 1 in the Heisman.
I had him at 4 last week.
Yeah, I mean, just because of how dominant he's been, and he's different than a guy like Manti Te'o was a few years ago, for example, because he's just that dominant, and he's on a team that's consistently been good, is what he basically talked about. But in terms of Hurts and Fields, look, this thing is far from over, and there's still a lot of time. And if you want an example, look at last year. Tua was the foregone favorite. He had it locked up, had a couple bad weeks. Kyler keeps playing well. Kyler wins the Heisman. So if Joe Burrow has a couple of tough weeks and Jalen Hurts or Justin Fields continue to play well, they could very easily slide up to number 1.
It'll be interesting to see what gives these guys the edge, because all their numbers are absolutely fantastic. Where you can go down the list where it's like Tua, I don't know how many. I don't know if he only has 1 interception still in the year. Who knows? Jalen Hurts has the total yards with touchdowns. Same with Justin Fields. Joe Burrow, just the amount of touchdowns he's been throwing. It's like all 4 of these guys, you can make the easy case. And I get a text right now from my protege who I've been helping out. He's currently in one of the edit bays right now, and he says, "Yo, dude, can you hear these girls in the hallway?" And he's at an edit bay that's probably 20 or 30 feet from here, and he can hear them. So whatever these girls out there in the hallway are doing, I don't know if our intern or if Brady was able to get a look out there what's going on, but I don't know what's happening out there.
There's a rager in the hallway.
I didn't see anybody in the hallway.
There's a
I want to
rager.
look outside. Dude, it sounds like there's a sorority party.
Sorry, I'm just I'm
Josh
texting
leaves
them right now. So a lot.
What do you think needs to happen, for example, for Hurts or Fields to slide up?
I literally have no idea, because all of their numbers are just so incredible. And like you mentioned it as well, all their records are going to be near the same. So if you have 2 teams that are undefeated, 2 teams with 1 loss, what's going to give them the edge? I don't know.
It's going to have to be poor play. It's like what happened with Tua last year. I mean, he had it locked up, and then he had a couple of really, really tough weeks, and he kind of lost his case. I think that's what has to happen. If Burrow has an okay game against Alabama, again, I will not drop him past 3rd. If he has another tough game in a following week, then all of a sudden you can really start to have a conversation.
Josh, what was going on out there, bud?
Dude, I was just a bunch of girls laughing. I then I made awkward eye contact with one of them, and I didn't want to be mean and glare at her. So I played it off by walking over to Brady's studio and peeking in the window, "Oh, are we good? Any
we're all good,
technical
Josh.
difficulties?"
We're all good in here.
But when I walked by, there were 2 other girls that were in an edit bay, and it was dark, and I think they thought I was somebody else. And when I walked by, they both went "Hey!" And then I turned around and did a double take, and they both started laughing because I was not who they thought I was.
So now I think when trying to determine these 4 guys, maybe even with Chase Young as well, I think what it might come down to is how do they perform in essentially the biggest game of the season. So they'll look back at this and they'll look at Tua. And they'll say, how did Tua do against LSU? Look at that. They'll say, Joe Burrow, how did he do against Bama? They'll say Justin Fields, how did you do in the Penn State game? Jalen Hurts, his is going to be a little tough because looking at the rest of his schedule, if Baylor is in fact this legit when they play Baylor on November 16th, so next week, that could be a top 10 win on the road. I do not know what is happening. If you're listening to the show right now live, can you tweet at us and let us know if you can hear these girls, or unless the last 5 minutes we've just been crazy to hear and things.
I hear it too.
If you guys can hear these girls on our show, tweet at us and let us know. So
we're not going crazy. It is very possible that our mics aren't picking it up, but we can hear it through the door.
It's girls
and through
gone
the walls.
wild out there.
I don't think it's that.
I think this Baylor win, this might have to be the Heisman game for Jalen Hurts. Because looking at it back this year, Texas, that was their best, opponent of the year so far. But Texas isn't ranked anymore, guys. So looking at this right now, Texas doesn't have...
They're not back. They're not ranked.
Or Oklahoma doesn't have any ranked wins currently at the moment. Now, they do play... Or I guess... I was going to say Kansas State, but we know what happened against Kansas State. So I think out of the four, I think Jalen Hurts has been the most impressive. You can maybe make the case he's been the best player. But, the team-wise, that they should... I guess since Kansas State was, 16th? They're ranked 16th. That's not as bad of a loss as it once was. But all these guys, luckily for them, they have a huge game coming up. Jalen Hurts doesn't really have that game unless it's going to be Baylor. But again, how good is Baylor? We'll have to wait and see. And then again, Chase Young, probably best player in the country. He's been dominant. He's going to finish the season with 20 sacks. Who knows how he does against Penn State? If he comes out and he gets 5 sacks, 4 sacks against Penn State, a few tackles for a loss, maybe all of a sudden Chase Young's in the top 3.
Yeah, it's possible.
Which we can see what does now bring us. Normally we... What? Hello? Normally we don't really do game previews, but now, unfortunately, we're not previewing a 1 versus 2 matchup. We're previewing a 2 versus 3 matchup, but this is too big of a game to ignore when we get to the pick'ems. Guys, unfortunately... We're all going to be missing this game because this is at the exact same time as the ASU USC game. The exact same time. What are the odds?
Well, we will have. Brady and I are calling the game this week. Lyle will be in the booth, but we'll have the game on.
And Blake will be by
as long as you guys are, if you guys are okay having that.
Mark and Stacy are in town.
I'm going to be with Mr. and Mrs. Harris Highlights. They're coming into town, and
is that your legal last name, Harris Highlights?
Yes, it is. I was born Blake Harris Highlights.
When his dad ran for mayor, it said Mark Harris Highlights for mayor of Monrovia.
It did.
I'll just say this: if you guys are okay having the LSU Bama game up on the TV, by all means.
Oh wait, I just realized we're gonna want the ASU.
That's kind of what I thought.
Aren't we going to be watching it in front of us?
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys are literally going to the game's literally going to be on the field in front of you. Why do you want to have
monitors.
It on the TV?
We need monitors.
You do need monitors.
That is true. All right, guys.
I forgot we got to get a GoPro, Josh. Sorry, I just remembered.
So one by one, these two teams are meeting up. Now, the current line is Alabama minus 6.5. When we get to the pick'ems, I can give my thoughts on that line right there. And if my uncle's listening, I know he's all over Bama minus 6.5. He actually has a bet going on with his buddy, where his buddy's not an LSU fan, but he likes the Tigers. So both of them making a bet this week with the spread. My uncle's taking Bama.
I'm not a Dodgers fan, but I like the Dodgers.
My uncle's taking Bama in that one. So guys, all right, I know this seems basic, but we're going to start with LSU. How in the world are they going to go to Tuscaloosa and knock off Alabama?
They're going to score more points. Next question.
Well done. How's Alabama going to do it?
Well, I think it starts first and foremost is, does Tua play? I think that's number one, because as of right now, Alabama for the last couple of weeks has said he is a game-time decision. Now, I think Mac Jones is a solid replacement. If you're going to pick one, go with Mac Jones. But Jones just isn't Tua. So if Tua wins, I think things might swing in Bama's favor a little bit more, especially since it's a home game. But also, the LSU defense is good, the offense is unreal, and Bama's defense is not as good as it's been in the past. And I'm not saying it's not elite, it's still elite, but it's not as good as it's been in the past. I think LSU... God, Blake.
Sorry, I tried to make it as quiet as possible. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
There's quiet for you.
I think LSU. Those are a few things that I think can go in LSU's favor and help them win this game. On the other side of things, games at home for Alabama. They do have a good offense. They do have a good defense, and it's a good outlook for them to. I think it could really go either way.
Here's my thing on Tua being a game time decision, because if you want a spoiler, I think he's going to play.
Me too.
What are the odds Nick Saban is continuing to say he's a game time decision to make LSU? Okay, we kind of have to prepare for Tua. Now we also kind of have to prepare
100%.
We kind of have to prepare for Mac Jones.
That's
So who's
exactly
going to start? Oh, Tua's going to start. We didn't put 100% of our time into Tua, and now we have a disadvantage. Is there any chance he's doing that?
There is no way that Tua does not play this game.
That's what I think too.
There's no way.
That's what I think too.
I know this is a very, very rare occurrence in happening, and there's probably zero chance it does happen. But what if you bring your first drive, you bring Mac Jones out?
To throw him off?
Throw him off.
It's possible.
I
Oh,
like
that
it.
would be
Jedi mind trick. Nick Saban
They're
would be
just going to run the ball a bunch, yeah.
Nick Saban would be the one to do it, wouldn't he?
That would be so baller, dude.
He would absolutely be the one to do it, Brady, if anybody was going to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
If Nick Saban does that for the first drive and then throws Tua out there, he might become my favorite college football coach in the country right now. That would be so baller.
That would be pretty crazy. Yeah, I think Tua playing is absolutely the X factor for Alabama. And if he doesn't for whatever reason, and it really is Mac Jones for all 60 minutes, I think it's a whole different ball game because he has to handle a huge game spotlight pressure that he's never handled before. In terms of LSU, here's what I think the key is. They need to score points, and they need to do it early. Because when Alabama sets the tone, it's usually game over. When they strike first, when they get up 14-0, there is no letting the foot off the pedal, and there is no letting a team back into the game, usually. Even for a club like LSU who's probably going to put up some points. If LSU can put up points early, and they can set the tone, get Bama off their game, and really make them kind of play from behind and change up their game plan, that's their best chance. Because, again, if you let Nick Saban and Tua Tagovailoa really kind of set the tone and kind of manage the game the way they like to manage it, LSU's going to have a tough time trying to play from behind, especially in Tuscaloosa.
Agreed. I'm trying to do a quick stat check right now, and I probably won't get it
that's
soon
fine.
enough.
But, yeah, that's
but the thing I'm trying to look up is in the last games that Alabama has lost, who has scored first?
Oh, okay.
And that's the big thing. So let's check.
Well,
back to 17.
even without that, yeah, with LSU, I mean, yeah, you have a Heisman quarterback like Joe Burrow, you have a wide receiver core of Jefferson, Jamar Chase. They can score a lot of points, but again, they need to put up some points early.
Yeah, I mean, as Brady said the other day, this is what happens with going last. You guys take everything out of my mouth.
in the last two games, so going back to the 2017 National Championship, Alabama's two losses, both in the National Championship. I'm sorry, one in the National Championship, one towards the end of the regular season. The other team has scored first. So the last two losses, the other team has scored first. So that's a big key for this one is for Bama. I know it's a very small sample size. It's only two losses, two games. But scoring first for them usually bodes well in the outcome.
All right, guys. Now, obviously, every team needs to win each game, but who needs this win more? Like, I mean,
You want to go, Josh?
I'm actually going to start. I'm going to lead. I'm going to lead off with this, guys.
Okay.
It's good because he knows he's going to tell him I'm going to tell him he's an idiot.
Exactly. Alabama 100% needs this win more than
How?
LSU. I guess great minds think alike.
How?
How what?
What do you mean great minds think alike?
LSU has already some great wins on the season, where if Alabama loses this game, I don't think there's any chance Alabama can make the playoff.
Have you watched what has happened with Alabama each in the last whatever seasons? The committee loves them. They adore them. If they have one loss, they're still getting in anyway.
No,
it's Alabama.
I think I get Blake's point, but your question should not be who needs the win more. It should be who can lose this game and still have a better chance of making the playoff.
Who can lose this game?
Because they do both need the win.
They both need the win so bad.
Well, whoever loses the game is most likely not going to be in the SEC title game, so they're not going to have that to get them over the hump. So, I mean, that right there. So who, I guess, however Josh worded the question, Josh, you may answer that question you asked yourself.
So the question that Blake did not ask and did not remember to ask was, who can lose this game and still get into the college football playoff? And I think, to Blake's point, is LSU. I think it's LSU. I think LSU can. Excuse me.
So we were right. We were both right.
Yes, but your question was awful. I think Alabama can lose this game, and LSU can go to the SEC title game and win. And I could see Alabama being left out. On the other side of things, I think that LSU is good enough to be able to get in with a loss. But again, it ultimately all depends on what else happens. Does Ohio State beat Penn State convincingly? Does Georgia get another win somewhere in there? Does Clemson lose? I mean, they're not going to, but what if Clemson loses? There's a lot that needs to happen, I think.
Yeah, and I think even more than that, what happens in this game? Because if one team blows the other out of the water, then all of a sudden things can change in terms of how the committee looks at things. But again, until I physically see the selection committee have the top 4 teams in December for who's going to the playoff, and the University of Alabama is not one of them, I will not believe that they're not going to get into the playoff even with a loss, because the committee always puts them in because they're Alabama and the history and all that. Until I physically see it, I'm not going to believe it. Even with one loss, they're probably going to get in.
Here's a question for you, Lyle. Here's a question for you. Let's say, however things play out, let's say like there's a Pac-12 team that's going to get in. Let's say that like Georgia, for whatever reason, they win the SEC title game. Let's say it comes down to like Ohio State, Penn State, one of those teams. Let's say that the battle between the 4th and final team comes down to a one-loss Alabama team where essentially the best team they played they lost to, or an undefeated Clemson team. Who do you think? Actually, not who do you think. Who would you put in?
Who would I put in? Again, I have to give the nod to Clemson because if you go undefeated and win your conference, that's all that can be asked. And if they go 13-0, it's the defending national champions. It's going to be a little bit tough to leave them out. But again, that's a scenario that it's possible it can happen. But again, I am not going to believe Alabama's not getting in the playoff, even with a loss, until I physically see it.
That's a good question, Blake.
Oh, thank you.
That is a good question.
Yes. But again, let me get this straight. In this scenario,
yes,
3 teams are in.
Yes.
There is one more spot, and it is between 2 teams, and it's a one-loss Alabama team that lost to LSU and undefeated Clemson.
Correct.
I agree with Lyle. I think it would be tough to keep Clemson out, especially if they win the ACC, defending national champions. But again, for me, it comes down to number 1, strength of schedule. Well, not in any particular order. I'm just listing them. Number 1, strength of schedule. Number 2, evident talent on your roster. And number 3, your results. That's what it comes down to. And for me, even if Clemson goes undefeated, they get 2 of those. They get the results, and you've got the talent. You don't have the strength of schedule for me.
That's fair. The only thing I don't love about strength of schedule is is it their fault? Like they have to play ACC games.
You're right.
And they played Texas A&M at the beginning of the year, who was ranked top 15 at the time, and then they've fallen out. That's the only thing about strength of schedules. Like Clemson had a tough game early in the year, non-conference, and then because of the conference they're in, they are forced to play these games. They can't go and play Ohio State in the middle of the season. So yes, they only beat North Carolina by 1. That doesn't look like a great win right now, but even still, like if you win all your games and you win the conference, I think it's tough to leave them out.
True, but didn't we all think that Texas A&M was not that good anyway?
That's true. But again, it's all about this game was, I'm sure, scheduled way in advance, and in Texas A&M, at least going into the season, was well regarded. I didn't think they'd fall out of the top 25. I mean, I knew they had a lot of tough games, but I thought they'd finish in the 20s was my only thing. But again, that's the thing about the ACC is it's such a weak conference that this is the reason we're having this Clemson talk, because they haven't played anybody. However, again, strength of schedule is not all really in the hands of Dabo Swinney and the players. They just have to play who's on the schedule.
This would be a fun show to do if we just went over like every possible scenario that can happen, discussing all this fun stuff, which brings us to our next a scenario, but I guess also next just game to go over, just because it's going to be a pretty good game. Now I do have to change what the rankings are, but Minnesota does host Penn State this upcoming weekend. So Penn State, they come in at 4. Minnesota, I believe, was it 17? They had him at Minnesota 17. That still seems a little rough. Well, I guess this is kind of tough now, but I mean, I guess you could still maybe make the case. So it was easier when they were 13. 17 might be a little stretch, but I'm going to ask it anyway, guys. If Minnesota knocks off Penn State, and I believe they'll move to 9-0, are they officially going to be a contender? Now, they're not going to be cracking the top 4, but do you think they potentially could be the Minnesota Gophers, Lyle, do you think they could possibly be a contender to make the college football playoff.
They'd be a contender. I mean, by the pure definition, they would be a contender because since they're on the other side of the Big Ten, they could get into that Big Ten conference game. And if they somehow beat Penn State, I'm sure they would shoot up the rankings toward like 10. And if they somehow won the Big Ten at an undefeated 13-0, yeah, you have to consider it. Are they going to do that? No, they're not. But
Colt takes exposed.
But I mean, yes, by the definition, they are a contender because they're undefeated in a Power 5 conference and are looking like they have a real chance to be in the title game.
Now, the thing for Minnesota that they have in their favor, they do have Penn State, so I guess they would move to, what is this? Yeah, they'd move to 9-0 on the season. Following that, at Iowa, at Northwestern, so that's going to be a win, and then home against Wisconsin. So if they can go 4-0 over these next 4 games, I think there's a chance that they might even be ranked like 5 or 4 going into that Big Ten title game, which is going to be against Ohio State, because Penn State, they're ranked 4. Again, I don't have the playoff rankings in front of me, but I want to say Iowa and Wisconsin, they're both in the top 20, I would say. So
Iowa is 18, Wisconsin is 13.
So Minnesota, you are in the driver's seat. If you just want to mess around, have a little fun, and make the college football playoff this year and just make Lyle just have a Virginia 2.0 all over again, by all means go for it, but it is going to be tough to beat Penn State
Although
this
I
week.
would like to say something like, yeah, they're playing Penn State this week. When you look at what Minnesota has done this year, they've still proven very little. Their best win is currently either Illinois, who's 5-3, or Nebraska at 4-5. Like, they don't have a single impressive win. If they somehow beat Penn State, yeah, they're going to garner some attention. But I mean, their schedule, my goodness, it's not pretty.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
But that does transition us now into the Q&A.
This is
All
the first
right.
real Q&A we've had in a while.
Yeah, we got a bunch of good questions this week, guys. So we got 5. Not that we don't always get good questions. It's just that a lot of our questions we get are about what we're talking about on the show anyway. So we went to our first one. This comes from Sports by JR. If the NCAA expanded to a 64-team field, just exactly like I wish, just exactly like I envision one day, what team would be primed to go on a Cinderella run?
Can you repeat the question, please?
If they expanded the playoff to a 64-team format, who could potentially go on a Cinderella run?
Now.
I was going to say,
App
this
State.
year. Go ahead, Brady.
App State.
Yeah, that's one. I would say Cincinnati or SMU would be 2 of those teams.
Memphis?
Yeah. I would say Cincinnati or SMU would be my 2.
The Indiana Hoosiers.
Chill.
7-2, big dog. 7-2.
Are they actually 7-2?
7-2.
How is that possible?
They received 27 votes for rankings this week.
Who have they beaten?
I don't know. Doesn't matter.
Kind of.
Stop. No, it doesn't.
So now, to be a Cinderella team, I feel like you shouldn't be like a ranked team. So that's why Brady's was a little better, I want to say. Because, I mean, App State, I don't think they're ranked anymore, but Cincinnati, they're in the top 20, I think. So does that really qualify as a Cinderella?
Josh, Ball State, Eastern Illinois, Connecticut,
Oh, boy.
Compared to what?
True.
Rutgers, Maryland, Nebraska, Northwestern.
True.
All right.
I'm looking at these AP poll. Dude, wait, how is this possible? North Dakota State got an AP poll vote this week?
Yeah.
What? I mean, yeah.
Dude, they did a couple years ago when they had Wentz.
I know, but
They're an
FCS.
This is FBS AP poll, isn't it?
What?
Yeah.
That's
Like
all
I
right.
said,
There's my Cinderella
the
team.
relegation bowl needs to be a thing.
There's my Cinderella team right there. That's how does that? What? Can an FCS team somehow be in the top 25? We'll have to wait and see. Elliot Spurling says, "Hi guys, greetings
Hi.
from England. Cheerio by the pond, fish and chips.
Big Ben.
Who do you think,
think you said that.
will represent the group of 5 in the New Year's Six, and which matchups do you want? My picks would be either SMU versus Texas or Boise State versus Auburn."
I like Boise. I like Boise State a lot.
I do too. I'll put I've talked about this with one of our friends. I'll say Boise State and Notre Dame.
I'll say Boise State and ASU's going on a run. Boise State and ASU.
Oh, no.
No, I'll say Boise State and Clemson when they get left out of the playoff.
I could see like Boise State and Florida being a pretty cool matchup.
Battle of the blue and orange.
Exactly.
I mean, At this rate, I mean, Memphis is one back of Cincinnati for being the highest ranked group of 5 teams. So I like Memphis, and we'll put Memphis against Michigan. Why not?
Okay.
We'll have that.
Okay.
We'll have that. Gage Martin says if Georgia, LSU, and Bama all have one loss after the conference championship, do they all make it? Now, I mean, you're going to have a lot of things go their way. We're going to have to maybe have like Minnesota just mess around, win the Big Ten title game, something to happen maybe in the Pac-12. But let's just, for the fun of things, guys, say there's a bunch of chaos that happens. Do you think all 3 of those SEC teams could make it?
Not all 3 of them.
No, maximum 2.
Yep, agreed.
All right, moving on to the next question. This comes from X Triumphs YT. I'm curious as to how you guys compare teams. For example, Georgia beat Notre Dame by 3. Michigan beat Notre Dame by 20. I think Georgia's a better team, but I wonder, how do you compare teams that have played common opponents?
I think it's about who beats who. It's you got to go head-to-head record, right?
Yeah, I think you got to go head-to-head record. I think the eye test is also important too.
I think one of the big things is also location and time of year. So, like, week 1 of the season is very different than week 10 of the season in matchups like that for teams.
Oh, yeah, I always say if you lose late, it's way, way worse than losing early. Because the new factor.
The new factor.
The new factor. I like it.
Or the recency factor, I guess is a better way to put it.
The new factor. The new factor. This one comes from, I think, Sygy.
Siggy?
S-Y-G-I.
Blake would be a
Siggy.
phenomenal broadcaster. He's so good at pronouncing
Wow,
names.
how would you pronounce this?
I think it's Saigi.
Sygy.
Blake,
Well,
you are a linguist. You are a man of the language.
all right. He wants to know, what are 2 teams the Big 12 should potentially pick up? And also, what do you think about the Big 10 dropping Rutgers for Cincinnati?
I like dropping Rutgers for Cincinnati completely. Again, I've said it before. I would like to see the Big Ten drop at least Rutgers. I do think Maryland works better in the ACC. I like that they're in the Big Ten, but I think they work better in the ACC. I'd like to see Maryland stay in the Big Ten, but if I said the Big Ten were to drop 2 teams, obviously it'd be Rutgers and Maryland, the 2 teams that they added, and I would like them to add Notre Dame and Cincinnati.
You mean the Big 12?
I'm talking about the Big Ten.
Oh, okay.
The Big 12, just because of the Cincinnati thing.
Okay.
The Big 12, for me, it's so easy. It's Boise State and it's Houston, and it has always been those 2 teams.
Yeah, I mean, I love the dropping Rutgers for Cincinnati thing. Sorry to our big viewer, Tall Matt, who says Rutgers for the playoffs every week. But, yeah, they ain't going to be making the playoffs if they're dropped out of the Big Ten. Big 12, yeah, a huge proponent for Boise State. Like the Houston idea. I think San Diego State could possibly be another, so there's a couple to throw out.
I think the San Diego State one's pretty cool because they've just sort of been a middle-of-the-pack hidden top team over the last couple of years. Obviously, the Boise State, they're going to be the one group of 5 team that will always be pegged as the one to come to a new Power 5 conference. Until something happens and something realigns, it'll always be Boise State for me. And then just get rid of Rutgers. Who cares?
Now, I mean, I do like the Boise State one, and since this is the Big 12, I say maybe add a Houston, because especially since they're in kind of like that realm. I think adding like San Diego State, that might be a little tough. I think if San Diego State's ever going to move, it's probably going to be to the Pac-12. I think that probably makes the most sense. But again, I'm just looking that much more forward to our conference realignment show sometime in the offseason, where we can pretty much say, we're in charge of college football. Here's how we're ranking, or not ranking, but here's where we're putting teams moving forward. So,
what about SMU to the Big 12 now?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, Brady.
Go Shane
That's a good
Buechele.
one. Now, guys, this wasn't in our notes, but before we move on to the pick'ems, we had a coaching change. This actually, I think it was yesterday that happened. Willie Taggart was given the axe from Florida State with, I believe, a $17 million buyout. So imagine saying, you know what, hey, you're fired, but you're still going to get paid $17 million. So how about that? So, guys, Willie Taggart's gone. Now, I think it's kind of, I don't think he was ever a really good hire to begin with, because I just think he was kind of an overrated coach. I didn't like that. But you gave him essentially, a year and a half? I think he was there for a year and a half. That's not enough time to give a coach there. Florida State, what they've been compared to in years past, it's not where they should be, but they're definitely improving from where they have been. They're probably going to finish the season with 7 wins. Give them, I think, one more year to figure it out, then go by there. But to fire him in the middle of the season, 'cause now this just screws up this season, this screws up probably next season, all of his recruits. I think that's a stupid move on Florida State's part, especially considering you have to pay him $17 million to not coach.
That's one of the big things for me is you said the word recruits, and that's the recruit timeline is through the next couple of years. That's one of the things where I think you give coaches a 3-year minimum so they get their own recruits into the system, get them into plays, and let them work their way up. So, listen, I said I think most of us said he was one of the main coaches on the hot seat in one of the episodes a couple weeks ago, but I didn't think it was this hot.
I mean, it's hotter than I thought.
It is hotter than I
Truly
thought.
hotter than I thought.
Yeah,
hotter than I thought.
I agree with the 3 years thing. You got to let your own guys get in. It's when it's not your own guys, it makes it that much tougher. It's kind of like what we talked about with Charlie Strong a few years ago. Is it just makes it so tough when you have guys that are not your own recruits, guys that you're not walking into their houses to pitch them to go to your school. It's, you need time. These things can't happen in the blink of an eye.
Any potential names you can see going to Florida State next year? Lane Kiffin, Josh?
So I saw Bob Stoops on Twitter, but that was all false. So
No, the Bob Stoops thing was confirmed to be false.
Yeah,
Okay.
so that was false. I saw Mike Leach once on Twitter today, or once or twice. I mean, I guess Washington State's defensive coordinator got fired, and I couldn't really ever see him leaving Washington State, but I guess that is interesting. That's a name to throw out. Yeah, I mean, it's so tough to throw out names because there's so many you can throw out. I mean, those are just a couple that I saw.
Jimbo Fisher.
Bring Jimbo back.
Yeah, maybe.
Bring Jimbo back. Brady, any names you'd like to see take over Florida State?
The bring Jimbo back, as I am putting my headphones back on because I was talking to somebody in the studio. The bring Jimbo back, that's not going to happen. We haven't talked about him really ever since he was hired at Texas A&M. The Jimbo. The Jimbo.
The Jimbo.
Well, he may or may have not gotten away with a lot of things at Florida State, so maybe they were happy to have him out the door.
Yes.
Yeah. What about we sort of have to see where the coaching carousel goes after this season, though. What coaches are gone? What coaches are going to be let go? Things like that. But I heard you guys mention this. I didn't hear what you said, but the Lane Kiffin moving up the state.
Yes.
I said the two I saw. I mean, the Bob Stoops stuff was false, I said, and then I saw Mike Leach like once or twice on Twitter today. That was kind of odd.
Bring Bill Self back into college football coaching.
No.
And see what kind of random amenities they give him at Florida
How
State.
about this? I mean, don't you mean Bill Snyder?
What did I say? Oh, yeah,
Bill
Bill
Self,
Snyder. I
yeah.
said Bill
I was gonna
Self a
say
couple
he,
episodes ago,
coached
too.
tonight.
Yeah, he did.
Different sport.
Yeah.
Bring back Bill Snyder.
Bill
see
Snyder.
what you can get him. But yes, that'll be interesting to see. But it is time now to get to the pick'ems.
All right.
Guys, time to pick some games. So Brady, load up that music, get it queued up. And while I wait to go over our pick'em standings, guys, it's time to go to our ESPN Pick'ems League, in which, all faith has been lost for all of us to win that league. I'm currently in 85th place. But hey,
Wow.
that's okay. That's all right. In first place, actually we have a two-way tie with 73 points, is Blake Walker and Curtis Weaver for Heisman. So Blake Walker and Curtis Weaver for Heisman, you guys are tied for first. Brady, I don't hear any music.
It's playing.
It is?
Yep.
Do you guys hear music?
Yes.
I hear no music.
There's music playing.
Huh.
I hear it. Do you
Have
hear
you
it loud?
I don't hear it, but it's okay. I trust you guys.
Have you been playing sound bites all show?
Really no sound
So I was
bites
going to say,
tonight.
because that means I have not heard a single one.
Nope.
All right.
I trust you, Brady.
Well, I don't hear any music. That's unfortunate because I always like hearing the tunes. But nonetheless, let's
Switch
get
headphones.
things underway. But while I do so, I guess I can switch headphones.
See
so
if that works.
Let's try that real quick. So Josh, how's it going?
It's going well. And you know what? While we wait for Blake, we're actually going to take a quick look at our college football fantasy scoreboard from this past week because we didn't get a chance to touch on it earlier in the show. And guys, we had another very, very interesting week in the league. Your boy got a pretty big win over only Big L's.
Let's just pause there. In a real league, in a 10-man league, I'm in first by myself.
hang on.
Let's throw away this 4-team whole thing.
Nope.
In a 10-man league, I'm in first place.
Okay.
Time out. The important thing. Blake, I know you're not going to do it because you like yourself too much, but you need to cut to yourself trying to untangle those headphones from that microphone.
Are you playing the music right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't hear it.
All right, so give up on it, Blake.
Anyway, in the other league where Lyle's in first place, I'm like a game or two out of I'm a game out of first place, and we tied because I had 3 players that were 1 yard short of getting me an additional point, which means I would have won that game. He wasn't short. He wasn't short.
Hey, I hope our friend TJ is watching this part of the segment. He's short.
He was not short.
He was not short at all.
He was not short. Anyway, I beat Lyle, and I believe Brady lost to Blake.
I lost to Blake because I started a quarterback that didn't play.
Oh, that's really disappointing.
Sam Ellinger.
That's really disappointing.
My entire bench got a combined 0 points.
That's bad.
Yeah.
I, for the life of me, can't figure out where the standings are on this page.
Just press league.
I am pressing league.
Bringing the Hurts 8-2. Harris Highlight 7-3. TaylorMade 3-7. No Big L's 2-8.
Yes.
In a 4-man league.
You act like Brady's 3-7. What's the difference?
That's pretty bad, too.
I got one more.
Now,
He's got more.
That's more wins.
That's true.
More wins.
And again, first place in a real league, Blake, in 10-man league.
Whoa. This is a league as real as it gets, but it is time to start.
3
our
running backs, 3
pick'ems
receivers.
now.
Okay.
Yes,
2-8.
I think this is. Hey, should we talk about Lyle's 4-5 team in his fantasy football league that
that's
he'd like
really-
to bring it with
yeah.
Pat Mahomes, Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, that's really
the
not a
list will
fun
go
time.
on.
I'm second in that league in points scored, and I can't catch a break.
Well, unfortunately, Brady, I cannot hear any sound effects you do like our normal pick'ems, so I'm just going to do this right now. In 4th place, he's throwing it. Okay. In 4th place with 74 points is Lyle.
Oh, wow.
Which means the sound effect is coming right now. In 3rd place with 76 points is me.
Oh, God.
Which means in 2nd place, all right, with 82 points is Josh. And still in 1st place with 88 points is Brady.
How many did Josh have?
I have 82, so I caught up a little bit.
Yeah, you're only down by 6 now.
Only a little bit. Last week, what was I down last week? Like 11?
I think Lyle and I officially have no chance.
Wait, what's Lyle at?
He's at
74,
74.
Blake's at 76.
Okay. No, you guys are still. I don't know if you guys can win, but you can definitely catch me for sure. So anything
All right.
can change.
Well, we have a lot of games this week, guys. I think I have 16 on the docket, so we'll have to get through these. We'll probably get through these in maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but hey, sorry, I just had to readjust. Let's get things underway. Temple at South Florida.
Temple at South Florida. You know, where are my picks? I made my picks and they're not here. Hey! What are you doing, man? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
I highlighted all of my pick'ems on the group document. Ooh, interesting. So don't look at those. Those are all my notes. Yeah, and this one, guys, I've got Temple over South Florida on the road.
I got Temple, too. I think the Owls get it done on the road.
Temple on the road.
You know what? At this point, I'm so far behind, I might as well start and try to catch up. So I'm going to go with South Florida at home. Again, I wrote down the AP poll rankings, so I'm going to have to go back. But right now, let's just say Baylor at TCU.
Baylor at TCU. You know what? Baylor has... Well, they've not lost a game, number one, which is cool. But you know what? They haven't had a lot of really big, convincing wins. And, you know, last week they just got by to stay undefeated. I'm taking Baylor on the road in this one again. I like the Bears on the road in Fort Worth.
I do, too. I got Baylor on the road. I think they continue their undefeated season.
Da Bears.
I think the Baylor Bears ride this out as well. Florida State, who now does not have a head coach. I mean, I don't know who. I guess the interim coach is probably...
He's been in the program for 25 years.
well done.
I don't remember his name, but he's been there for a while.
Florida State at Boston College.
Man, well, there's a lot going on for Florida State, and I'm not buying it. I've got BC on the road because I picked Syracuse last week, and wow, that was a mistake. I've got BC in Boston.
BC's at home.
Yes.
You said BC on the road.
Did I say BC on the road?
Yes, you did.
I meant BC in Chestnut Hill.
I got Boston College and A.J. Dillon, too. They're going to take down Florida State.
Boston College at home.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Boston College as well. Kansas State at Texas.
Kansas State has figured out a way to keep winning, but you know what? Texas is not back. They get the win at home. I'm taking the Longhorns.
I got Texas, too. I think Kansas State keeps it close, high-scoring game, but I got Texas.
Hook 'em horns.
I'm going to go with Texas in this game. Wake Forest at Virginia Tech.
I've got Virginia Tech at home over. Did my mic just
Sorry,
cut out?
I just bumped your.
What are you
level.
doing, man? Come on.
You're really loud.
Jeez. I've got Virginia Tech at home. I like the way they played against Notre Dame last week on the road. Lyle saw them firsthand. I've got the Hokies at home.
Yeah, I wasn't as sold as Josh. Offensively, they're very but I don't know. I think Wake Forest is actually a solid team. I think Wake Forest gets it done on the road.
I'm taking Wake Forest on the road.
The Demon Deeks on the road. Louisville at Miami.
Truly a game that I really don't want to watch, so I'm not going to. But I'm taking Miami at home.
Yeah, I got
reluctantly, but I am.
I got the Canes.
The Hurricanes of Miami.
I'm going to go with Miami.
Right? Like,
I'm gonna go with
this is
Miami.
a tough one
It's
to
a
pick.
weird one.
I'm going to go with Miami. UAB at Southern Miss.
I like UAB. I mean, first of all, great logo. Looks like it should be on like an MLS jersey. And the Blazers, their mascot's a dragon. They've also strung together a pretty decent season so far. I've got UAB on the road.
I did too, man. Josh and I have all the same picks. UAB.
Southern Miss at home.
I'm going to go with UAB just because I'm still pulling from after, a few years ago when they got their football program taken away, and then all of a sudden it's just back. So, way to go, Blazers. Iowa at Wisconsin. Some good Big Ten action. I need to look up what the over-under is for this game because I'm sure it's barely above 30.
This is going to be a really low-scoring game. Both teams really stout defensively, very similar offenses, but I think that in terms of not only just talent, but I don't know. I just like Wisconsin in this one. I think Taylor scores a late touchdown to really put it away. I've got Wisconsin. My boss went to Wisconsin, and he's a big Scotty guy, so I've got the Badgers at home.
Yeah, if Jonathan Taylor wants to make a statement and really kind of throw his name into the hat even more so in this Heisman race, he's got a chance to do it this weekend against a really good Iowa defense. Not as sold on Iowa. I like Wisconsin a little bit more, so I got Wisconsin.
Over under 38.5. Oh. Wisconsin favored by 9.5.
Oh,
wow.
I'm taking Wisconsin at home. Jonathan Taylor, 2 touchdowns.
Tailor-made. I'm going to go with the Badgers in this one. Appalachian State at South Carolina.
You know what? South Carolina has a couple of decent wins this year. I don't think they're a bad team, but I've got App State on the road.
So do I. App State over South Carolina.
I got South Carolina at home.
I got to go with the Cox. I mean, I got to go with them. Washington State at Cal.
The Cougs have fallen off a little bit this year. I thought that the offense was going to stay really strong as they were the first few weeks. They've kind of slowed down a bit. But you want to talk about slowing down. Let's take a look at this Cal team that was 4-0 to start the year, then lost at home to ASU as a top 15 team, lost on the road at Oregon 17-7. That's not a bad loss, to be honest. Then lost at home to Oregon State, then went up to Salt Lake City and got absolutely ran by Utah 35-0. I've got Wazoo in Berkeley.
I did too. Washington State, man. Cal has really taken a turn for the worst.
Wow. Oh, man.
Washington State's quarterback's been responsible for 26 touchdowns this year.
That's true. He's my quarterback.
That's a lot, Josh. In case you didn't know, that's a lot.
It's more than a little.
And less than a bunch. Going Washington State on the road.
I'm going to go with the Cougs in this one. Lyle, what was that stat you were saying where Colorado's like 0-20 after they play
the
ASU?
last 3 years, like after playing ASU, they're winless. Like after they played them in 2017, they were winless.
Colorado?
After they played them in 2018, they were winless. And then this year, they're winless since playing ASU.
What's crazy is the fact that 3 years ago now, they played here in Tempe. It was the salute to service game, and ASU wore the all beige camo uniforms. That was late in the year. The last 2 years, they've played in like week 4, and then they've lost out.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And Colorado pulled an ASU last year, didn't they? Where they were 5-1, they lost 6 in a row and didn't make a bowl game.
You have to try to be that bad.
Yeah, you do.
I think they lost 7 in a row.
Maybe it was 7. Maybe you're right.
I don't know.
No, I think they were 5-1, so it ended up being 6 in a row. Tennessee at Kentucky.
Hang on real quick, Josh. Speaking of that salute to service game, that was 2 years ago yesterday.
Cool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Tennessee at Kentucky.
Tennessee at Kentucky. You know, Tennessee. I'm gonna take a page out of BK's book this week. Hey Lyle, you'll always be the guy that sits across from me Good old Rocky Top. Woo. Rocky Top, Tennessee.
Woo. I've got Kentucky.
I've got Kentucky.
You know what? I'm going to go with Tennessee in this one.
All right.
Because why not?
The Vols.
You're not allowed to say that.
All right. Iowa State at Oklahoma.
I got Oklahoma at home. I just think they're too explosive. Brock Purdy, Iowa State. Maybe they'll score some points, but I like Oklahoma's defense and offense in this one.
I did too. I think Oklahoma wins by 20.
Blake stole a page out of my book, so I'm going to steal one from his. I'm your host for the evening. Not this evening, all evenings. I'm going Oklahoma at home by 3 scores.
Yeah, I'm going
all 3 field goals.
I'm going Oklahoma by a good amount. Wyoming at Boise State.
You know, Wyoming, I think they make it a fight in Boise. I like the Broncos, or as my roommate hates when I say, the Bronx.
Yeah, and they're coming off a tough loss last week, too, so they kind of really need a bounce-back win at home. I've got Boise State.
I got Boise State at home on the Smurf turf.
I got Boise State, but I think Wyoming can get the job done in this one. Penn State at Minnesota.
I hope this one doesn't come back to bite me in the comments section, but I'm taking Penn State on the road by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, Penn State. I really hope next week we get to come into the studio and I finally get to talk about, Minnesota's really not that good.
Dude, if they prove us wrong, they prove us wrong, but I just don't see it happening.
Penn State.
You know, Penn State's one of those schools where I don't care. Penn State because why, Lyle?
Fantastic.
Because
why?
You know why?
That was the clean version of Lee Corso saying,
No, you know why, Brady? Not because why not? Because Penn State is simply better. And because why not?
Because what he said. Blake,
So
your turn to speak.
The spread in this game is Penn State by a touchdown. In which, by Lyle's reaction, I'm assuming he thinks it's going to be a tad bit more.
Yes, I do.
Hey, the odds to win the college football playoff has Penn State at a 40-1 odds and Minnesota at 150-1 odds.
Okay.
So who are you taking here, Blake? Where are you going with this?
You know what? You guys remember back in nursery school? I don't know they said anymore. Preschool, I guess should say. If that's what it was called back in my day, preschool.
Oh yeah,
I
aren't
don't
you
know
like
what
46?
I don't know what it's called now. But do you guys remember that song? You went row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Minnesota wins in the upset against Penn State. Row the boat, PJ.
sad.
Minnesota
That's
win
sad.
is just
Is it
a
sad?
dream.
Yeah,
Dude,
I'm getting a point on you next week.
Yeah?
If Blake gets this right, we're never going to live it down. It'll be the one time
Minnesota.
Blake can call us all out.
You know what I can guarantee, even more than a Penn State win, is if Minnesota wins, we're going to see on the Harris Highlights Twitter account at the HH Show _ when Minnesota upsets Penn State at Blake Harris, Kawhi Leonard meme. Hey.
Or how about this? How about this? If Minnesota wins, next week live on the show, I will shave Lyle's head.
Yes, I am down.
No.
See, the funny thing is, these guys always give me stuff for tweeting on the Harris Highlight Show Twitter account.
we all have access to it.
These guys all have access to the show's Twitter, and yet the entire season, I think I've made 95% of the tweets, maybe 100% of the tweets. So you guys are more than welcome to tweet whatever you guys want on the show anytime you want. You guys can tweet on the account right now.
I'm going to.
All right, do it. I do all the tweets, so hey, you guys can tweet whatever you want. If you want to do a hey on your own, you guys can go right ahead. I mean, I've been killing it with the tweets this past week. The one he did last week about Oregon and Michigan being back in the playoff, of the guy coming out of the coffin in the back of the truck and like dancing for a minute.
Did somebody text me the password?
Oh my goodness!
I'm not locked on the computer.
What about the one of that one guy yelling after that one team won the World Series?
Yes. Yeah, Blake, have you been emailed or sent a lawsuit yet for that? A lawsuit?
No, I have not.
That's good.
All right, so row the boat, which brings us to the game of the week: South Alabama at Texas State.
Yes.
See, here's it's an interesting one because these two teams are both just so bad at the moment.
You know what? We'll save that for the worst
Okay.
of the worst, and I guess we'll add this game. Number 3. Actually, no. I'm confusing myself yet again. Number 2, LSU at number 3, Alabama.
Guys, I mentioned it earlier. I think that LSU has a really good chance of winning this game because, well, I mean, obviously, right? I like the offense. In recent years, Alabama has said one thing to LSU's offense about their own end zone, and it was, do not touch. And LSU really hasn't touched the end zone too much in the recent years. And you know what? I think they will this year. They have an elite quarterback. They have an elite offense. But they're going to Tuscaloosa. They're playing on the road against a team that has an elite offense and an elite defense. And we all know Saban is going to pull Tua and toss him out on the field as a game-time decision. And I'm taking the Tigers on the road. I've got LSU over Alabama.
Well, I gave all my reasoning and thoughts earlier in the show when we previewed this thing, but I'm taking Alabama. Bama at home. Tua's going to play. He's going to play well, and they're going to get a win.
This right now marks the first time all season long I will not be pressing play on the "Thank you, man, love you, man, go Tigers."
I mean, I wouldn't be able to hear it
soundbite.
anyway, so.
Scroll play it anyways.
Hey guys, thank you, love you, man. Go Tigers.
But I'm taking Alabama. I just want to play the soundbite. Alabama at home. Tua's going to come out second possession. Mac Jones is going to get the start, but Tua, you're going to come in there and just light it up.
I like LSU with the +6.5. I like them even better with the money line. I think LSU can go into Tuscaloosa and pull out the victory. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see. I'm still bummed I can't watch this game. I just hope it's not like the game of the decade where it's like one of those things where were you when you watched the Alabama LSU game? Maybe it'll be another 9-6 game.
Probably.
One can only hope. Watch that happen too when Joe Burrow both just get shut out and they have awful games.
Somebody tagged us on Twitter and said, I've never wanted Minnesota to win more than I do right now.
Yes.
I love it.
Because we're going to shave Lyle's head.
No.
That guy Dean, yes, you get it. That guy Dean, well done. Which brings us to the worst of the worst, South Alabama at Texas State.
So, guys, I've never been to Alabama, but I can tell you right now that Jaguars are not native to Southern Alabama. So, for South Alabama, don't know. I like the. Obviously, there's no Sun Devils in Arizona, but there are literally no Jaguars in Alabama unless they're in a zoo. And there are Bobcats in Texas. So, I've got the Texas State Bobcats in my worst of the worst game.
Man. I'm going to go South Alabama. I'm just feeling it.
Wow.
I'm feeling it. My short and sweet worst of the worst this week.
Short and sweet. Wow. I like your usually long, extended, intricate.
I know it's been a couple weeks since I've done one. I'm gonna
Brady just stopped talking.
I'm gonna think of one for next week.
Because he started talking.
Okay.
You know what, Josh and Brady and Lyle and Blake? One of these is Texas State, which is a state. South Alabama is not a state. Alabama is a state. South Dakota is a state, but South Alabama is not a state.
Oh.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Texas
Thank
State at home
Bless you. Thank you.
by 1 point.
I'm going to go with Texas State in this one. Guys,
1-0, 3-2.
How now
3-2.
I heard Josh pronounce it away. I myself proudly say Jaguars. Proudly.
Jaguars.
I do. I always
Where's
have and
the
I
I?
always will. It's just in there.
It's
Jaguars.
just in there.
The Jacksonville Jaguars.
It's just not.
There is no
What card
I.
do you
I'd rather you say it like a British person and say Jaguars.
The Jaguar HD. Now, I myself say Jaguars. So if you're out there and you're one of those that says Jaguars like me, please let us know. I can't be the only one, right?
Nobody.
Jaguars. You guys say Jaguars.
No, I don't.
The Jacksonville Jaguars.
Jaguars.
No, Jaguars.
The Jacksonville Jaguars.
I like the Jaguars.
Wait, hold on. Now I'm self-conscious.
Jaguar.
Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, I've never said Jaguars.
Well, if you say Jaguars out there, either let us know on Twitter or let us know in the comments, because I know I'm not the only one. Hey, Josh tweeted on the account. All right. Brings us to the final game this week. USC at Arizona State. And as of right now, Arizona State are 2-point favorites.
This will be a fun one. I'm really looking forward to it. Brady and I are going to be calling the game. Our friend Matt's going to be our spotter. Lyle's going to be in the booth with us. I think we're going to have a really fun show, and I think it's going to be a good game.
Thanks for the invite.
Sorry, your parents are coming.
Oh, 'cause
my
I wasn't
parents are going to be here
invited.
too, but they won't be in the
Same.
booth. You know what? We interviewed Keaton Slovis today. True freshman starting quarterback for USC. Oh, did I not tell you about this,
No,
Brady?
you told me we were going to. You just didn't tell me when.
Oh, because I got an email like late last night that was like, dude, we got 1:30 Pacific Standard Time, or like that's it. So I had Matt, who's our spotter, do the interview with me. So, sorry, man. Hey, it's a fine.
That's fine.
It's a fine.
I'll
Okay.
remember
It's fine.
that.
We got something else planned. Though.
Yeah, okay.
We got something else planned.
We got some good stuff.
We got some good stuff coming out this week, and then on Blaze Radio, you're going to hear that interview with Keaton Slovis. But you know what? As always, I'm not going to do it. If Brady wants to make a pick, he can. I'm going to sit this one out, though. SC and Arizona State, it should be fun, but I'm going to sit back and enjoy it.
Fair enough. I'm gonna take the Devils. I'm gonna say it's actually high scoring. I'm gonna say Devils win by 3. I'm gonna say 37-34.
You know, I sort of joked with Lyle about this when he was calling the UCLA game. But then I remembered I'm up by like 6 or 7 in the standings right now, and I don't want to like risk it at all. And since Josh isn't making a pick, and you're the closest to me, I'm not going to make a pick either.
That's
I'm
respect.
just rooting for a nice, ethical, good, hard-working game from 2 great schools. Go journalism.
Brady,
go
what are you planning to wear for this game? I am curious.
Well,
Yes.
I'm going to wear my jean shorts. I'm wearing a Suns tank top at Jordan K. And I'm going to be probably bringing a Glockenspiel like some Bill Walton. Happy birthday, Bill Walton.
Brady, you gotta wear a tie.
No.
You
Brady's
gotta
going to do
wear-
his spotting boards on one of those trifold, like,
Styrofoam
science fair
trifold
ones.
bolts.
Brady, I really hope you reconsider and consider putting on a tie.
You know
I
what,
think
Lyle? Lyle, you may have just tied me down for that one. You see, tie pun.
Oh boy.
You know what? This is going to be a revenge game for USC and ASU. And this game is all about good, clean revenge.
Now wait a second. Now you and Josh are going to be on the call. Do you
Yes,
guys
sir.
have permission to be on air for this call?
I think
Do
so.
you guys have the green light from our director that we can get it's not just in text? Do you have confirmation via person that you guys can be on air to call this game just to be certain?
Hey, Josh, you're
I
the
made
head
the
of
broadcast schedule. I can do what I want.
this. So, Josh, right now, this is contractually, legally bound.
Yeah.
Can I do the broadcast?
I mean, on the broadcasting director, I say yes. Lyle's one of our assistant directors. You say yes. That's a yes.
Let's
we
do
can
it.
do what we want.
Listen.
So now let's just
doing
say
the game.
now let's just say even if you didn't get permission, you guys would be calling a game on radio, which would only be benefiting Blaze Radio by having lots of people listen to the show.
Yes.
So I would assume that no repercussions would come your way.
Well, although there is no written set of rules, we would understand the morals of it. But yeah.
all
Yeah.
right.
we'll be all right.
So permission has been granted to go on air.
Awesome.
Fantastic. And my do not touch sign has fallen.
Who you got, BH?
I am going to roll with the Arizona States. I think, Lyle, since these two are not making a pick, regardless of who we pick, I feel like we should get bonus points.
That's
I feel like,
just-
because
I
that's
feel
wrong.
like
It's
I feel
never
like,
worked that way in the past.
I feel like if
Never.
we're right, we should get 2 points
Oh,
since they're
wow.
not picking one.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think, you know what?
I think
As
that's
I've
unethical.
said so
Yeah, you know
many
what?
times.
It's-
This is my show,
And I run the board.
Okay.
You know what? I'd like to point out while there's a current fight going on in our studio, I was the only person to not get the ASU UCLA pick'em wrong. That's true. I was the only one. I
On
didn't
a
make a
major
pick, but
technicality, you are right.
Yeah, rip. I said, I said like ASU by a lot. Blake, did I
think we
hurt
all
you?
said ASU by a lot.
Did I hurt you?
And-
I didn't hurt you, but I think I hurt you.
and this show is really
Your
going to something
feelings.
else.
Yeah, you know what?
You know what,
Alright.
Blake? You
If
know
you
what?
guys would like
Blake,
to see
Blake,
a,
you're off
live,
the show.
a live stream of me beating down Josh, head to our Twitter at the HH Show_. Lyle's going to periscope it while I, just pull a new one on Josh. So I'm going with the Sun Devils. Yeah, what a show, guys. What a show that officially wraps up this episode of the Harris Highlight Show. Again, don't be thrown off, guys. We are now live at 9 p.m. Eastern because Arizona doesn't change the clocks.
That's true.
So hopefully, I like how Brady's saying wrap this up as if the show was long enough already. This thing's like an hour 45.
I did that because I'm playing the music and you can't hear it.
Oh. as I just hear someone zip something up. But that is wrap up this show. Make sure to tune in next week at 9 p.m. Eastern on BlazeRadioOnline.com. Follow the show on Twitter because Josh is tweeting now.
I am.
So
I just tweeted once.
You can see all of Josh's tweets at
All right.
the HH Show _. Join the Pick'ems group. Give us all a follow. Enjoy some college football. And listen to Josh and Brady on the call at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on BlazeRadioOnline.com. And if Brady, let's just say, wears a tie, maybe we can get a photo of it for next week's show. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe not. Maybe he'll wear a tie.
Just for you guys and for the history and the love of the 150th anniversary of the college football season and everything that we have done positively to talk about college football, I'm going to wear a tie for you.
It is truly a historic moment.
A historic moment.
Fantastic.
It's been a long time coming.
All right, well, for Josh Schaefer, Lyle Goldstein, Brady Klain, our one intern in studio because the other intern is on a date tonight.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Shout out to our intern because, hey, our guy.
We should have
are
all
proud.
gone to the restaurant and worn fake mustaches inside the background.
Guide. So this has been Blake Harris from the Bill Austin Radio Studio at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism in beautiful
Ethical journalism.
downtown Phoenix. Ethical journalists. We'll see you guys next week.